This is Launching Your Daughter podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now, here is today's episode. Episode 71. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning back in and joining me today. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about ways that parents, caregivers, and adults can actually encourage your teenager that's in your life and how that can actually help her self-esteem, and do some reflection on your own work regarding how do you encourage your own self. And before I get into that, I just want to remind you that I now offer parent coaching sessions. So if you're interested in that, feel free to get a hold of me at nicole@launchingyourdaughter.com. I also do life coaching or transformational coaching for women who are wanting to reclaim all parts of themselves that may have gotten lost in being a mother or trying to people please. So go ahead and check that out at nicoleburgesscoaching.com. And I hope you enjoy today's episode. Over the years, I've had a lot of parents come to me and tell me they are really concerned about their daughter's self-esteem. And I hear from the teen girls I work with some of the same things, that they're like, I just don't have any confidence anymore, or I just can't seem to do what others expect of me. I'm always failing them. And we've talked quite a bit in past episodes about accepting our imperfections, learning from certain things as we're, learning a new skill. It's not about perfecting it. It's about learning it and gaining that competence in a new skill. Today's episode, I'm going to give you kind of the pros and cons of ways that we sometimes reflect back to teenagers that can actually keep them stuck where they are or begin to build them up. And so much of this also is really pausing and doing some your own self-reflection regarding the language that you use or how you actually role model you feeling confident in yourself. So one thing that I see a lot is, especially for the girls, there's a lot of pressure they sometimes put on themselves regarding that academic performance or their performance regarding how they do playing an instrument, a sport, acting, whatever it may be. And some of that pressure actually comes from parents and teachers and those in their life as well. Some of it's intentional, some of it's more subtle, but we're going to look at how do we build them up if they're not doing so well in certain areas versus continue to reinforce that they're not enough. So when teenagers feel discouraged, meaning they don't think they can succeed, they don't believe they can make progress, they believe that they are a failure, that they're not going to be able to, please the parents, teachers, coaches, or whoever the authority figures are in their life, they can really you can see the decrease in their grades. You may see them stop practicing playing the instrument or not doing so well with playing the sport. And one way that you can actually encourage your teenage daughter is saying things that reflect her process, that you have faith in her, and that you believe she can do whatever she needs to do to make things the way she wants it, versus attaching it to praise, and that praise is where we have achieved an actual goal, right? Hey, great job on that. That's praise. Versus encouragement is, I love how much effort you were really putting into learning that new song for, band next week. It's amazing how much hard work that you're putting into that. It's incredible to watch this process with you. That's encouragement. One thing that I used to do was PCIT, which is called Parent-Child Interactive Therapy. And I would work in one room and the parent would be in another room with their young child, usually up to, I think it was age 7. And they would have an earpiece or a listening piece in their ear while I would kind of coach them through how to do labeled praises, which is really actually encouragement. So instead of praising them, saying, great job, or you're a good kid, which we're going to get into that in just a second. It would be more along the lines of when they gave a directive to their young child, thank you so much for putting that Lego piece away. Thank you so much for listening to mom or dad. That is really showing that you're seeing that child and you're not just giving it a praise overboard, in the sense of, again, you're being a good child. When young kids hear you're being a good boy or girl, then it's all or nothing type of thinking. And what I mean by that, if the child makes a mistake at school or they make a mistake at daycare or they make a mistake at home, then they're a bad girl or a bad boy. And we want to make the distinction between the behaviors when they're younger, saying, you made a poor choice and what did we learn? Or you're giving them the boundaries for how to correct that or what behaviors you're wanting or expecting from them. But as they enter into the teenage world, you're really trying to take a step back. You're still providing boundaries for your daughter. You're looking more at how can I help her develop more self-confidence. And one of those ways, I talked about way before, if you want to get your daughter involved in some of the decision-making that is going on in the family, go back and listen to episode 2 regarding family meetings. And help her get involved, whether it's planning a family vacation, maybe you're buying a new car or something for the family. Have your teenagers get involved in it. It's like, what do they like about the current car? What are they wanting in the next car? So that they can be part of that decision-making ability. Sometimes parents can be kind of, very ambitious about what they want their teenagers to be. And I know one thing that a lot of times gets focused on is the academic scores. So if your daughter's getting, D's or C's, then it's like, you've got to do better. If they're getting B's, you've got to do better, which really reinforces to your daughter that she's not enough and she can't meet your expectations. Maybe she really is doing what she can to keep those scores up, but it's a more challenging subject for her. Maybe she's not sure how to ask for, I need additional help. And so you explore that with her in a way that encourages her to say, hey, it's okay that, we have strengths and weaknesses in different areas of our life. And sometimes we need additional support when it's something more challenging, and that's okay. If you remember in episode 58, when I had this conversation with Neil Brown, we talked a lot about the kind of power struggles that can happen between parents and children when parents have a specific expectation maybe in their mind versus having faith and trusting that their teenager is going to make the right decision for them or be able to work through a problem if we're just supporting versus trying to rescue and take that over for them. And if you haven't listened to that, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that because it's about his book that he wrote regarding, taming those beasts that are in the family, which again, it's more about the power struggles. You want to encourage your daughter in the way that you're showing her that you're accepting her individual differences, which helps build self-respect. It is so common for teen girls to come in and they tell me about, again, I think sometimes it's unintentional, whether a parent or a teacher or a coach, they've got siblings and they compare that sibling to that teen girl. Oh, well, your sister Susie was so good at this soccer play, we're looking forward to, you doing the same thing. Well, it's like, that's not okay to do. They're two different children. So it's not comparing your children, and it's reminding your daughter if you don't do that. And she's like, but you want me to be like, my brother or my sister because they're really good at this thing over here. It's reminding her nope. We accept you for who you are. You have your own strengths, just as your, sibling does, and that we love you for who you are and who you're becoming. You're also seeing what makes her excited, and then you're reminding her of like, hey, I really notice that you get excited about working with horses and wanting to volunteer at the farm next door, and I think this is great. It's remembering too, parents, you have your own values, and I know we've talked about this in previous episodes, but you can't force your values onto your kids. It doesn't work because they're literally separate individuals or separate people. And so they're going to come up, especially during this teenage years, they're going to come up with their own thinking, their own belief system. And if you're not sure what your values are, or if your daughter doesn't know, go back to episode 1. You can actually, there's a PDF file that I've put in that episode. So you can go down there and click on values, and you can look at some of the values that are out there and explore those with her. What does she value in her life? Is it connection? Is it, security? Is it creativity? What is that? And then that's how she is kind of guided by her life, is those values. The other thing that you can do to encourage is you're looking at her effort and her improvement. So you're encouraging that. You find ways to encourage that. Maybe she's working on it. I really want to improve this grade in science class. And she's created a plan, and it's reflecting that back. It's like, wow, what a beautiful job that you've created a plan and you're putting effort into how to get that grade up. That's awesome. Really admire your hard work. So all of that goes into your noticing what she's doing. And again, you're having faith that she's able to do it. And if not, she'll ask for help then. You also want to focus on, her strengths and reflect those back to her as well. Because sometimes teenagers, they forget that, just as we adults do as well. When people come into therapy, they often are focusing on the negatives, what is not working within the family or with their daughter. And so our world seems to focus on a lot of the negativity as well, and our brain is wired that way. So I used to, when I worked with families who, if there was attention deficit issues with their son or daughter, the kids a lot of times would be really hard on themselves, and there would be a lot more kind of rebelling against teachers at school and then at home because they got told what they weren't doing enough of. And so often when we start to look at what they do things well and the effort that they're putting into, or that they're taking initiative on something, or they're helping around the house, call it like catching them doing good. It's the same thing when they're a teenager. If they have, they surprise you, you come home and they've got dinner or the table is set, it's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for helping us out and getting the table set or dinner ready. This really takes, the pressure off of me to get everything done as soon as I get home from work. And I really appreciate your help on this. Thank you. All of that is recognizing what they're doing. It's not minimizing the positives. We can get kind of in this, what I call the trance, where we forget to look for the good in any relationship this can happen. And it's being mindful of that. It's going back and looking for the good and not just going after the negative. Well, this didn't work. And see, I told you that person wasn't a good person. And that doesn't work. That doesn't help build her relationship up. So again, praise is a reward or a statement when we've completed an achievement. And if that's all we do, teenagers begin to measure their self-worth and that their ability to conform. And that's two different things. We want to encourage focusing on their strengths so they can start to recognize their abilities, feel confident and useful, that it's okay to be imperfect. And I know I talk about that a lot, but I'm going to keep talking about it. So one way to phrase, or some language, I guess, or some ways that you can talk about. Nicole was like, what are these things of encouragement? So some of that is, I like the way you handled that. You're making progress. I can see you put a lot of effort into that. Looks like you're moving along. Thanks for helping. It took a load off of me. Would you help me with this? And then state something specific. Again, is it, setting the table? Is it taking the trash out? Is it, I don't know, walking the dog? Something that you're saying you need extra help, and they're able to respond to that. Don't add, here's some things that are really more of discouragement. Don't add the but or so at the end of these sentences. So, for example, if you say, I see how you work so hard on that, but you still could have done a neater job. That's discouraging. right? Or, so why don't you do this all the time? That's not encouraging. It's discouraging. Or just keep up the good work. Again, that's like, be the good kid. Keep up the good work. It's a praise statement, but it discourages at the same time because it's like, I don't know what you mean by that. So now if I don't do this, then I'm not enough. So that's why having more specific encouragement or phrases really helps with that. You focus on their effort, their process, that you see that they're improving, and that you accept them for who they are and where they are. If you want to really build up their self-encouragement, right, give them some responsibility. This goes back to, you see how they're being accountable and responsible for things, then step it up a little more. And then I know a lot of times parents, there's apps so they can track their kids where they are. And I get some of that's due to safety reasons. It's also making sure though, if you're saying, hey, it's okay for you to go out with X group of friends, that you have some faith in them, that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And you're not checking on them constantly when they're out. If they don't get home by the curfew time, then there's a consequence for that. And it's making sure that they understand that before they go, but that you are showing them that you are trusting them and that you're giving them more responsibility. Again, go back to, showing their appreciation for what they do at home. If they're helping out around the house, or that they went to the grocery store and bought some ingredients that were needed. As we talked about, with those family meetings, ask your teens for suggestions or feedback. If there's something regarding the family and you're wanting to make some decisions and things like that. And then you're helping them accept the mistakes that they made. We all make them, and that doesn't go away as an adult. Let's say your daughter didn't study so well for a test, or she got a really bad score on a homework assignment. It's going back and saying, oh, well, so what happened? And what do you think you need to do the next time to change that? So it's just, you're there again. And I know Lisa and I talked about that from her book. You're putting that accountability back on her, but also knowing that, it's like you're not stopping loving or caring about her because she made a mistake. You're really working as more of a collaboration with, is there anything else you need? Is there any ways that we can support you differently? And if she's like, no, I'm okay. I just know I need to study more often, or I need to, turn the homework in because I forgot. It's like, okay, excellent. When I talked about before, you're really emphasizing her process versus the product or the result. You can be encouraging on her efforts and her progress, and let her, then when she's done with this, like, so how do you feel about it? Let her tell you. If she's like, oh, well, I was disappointed that, I didn't get X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay. And did you see what, you did well in this? And you can really explore that with her versus, hey, that's, great, but it can even do better when you're finished, or it's going to be even better when you're finished. That's discouraging her again. Another thing I notice in families, or especially with teen girls, right? We've talked about how the brain changes during the teenage years, and they can feel things a lot more intensely. So oftentimes girls they really are wanting to support their friends, but they really take on their friends' emotions. And then they start to feel really overwhelmed, sometimes depressed, because they're struggling with how to do that. And so you see her, she's coming home and she's crying, or she may be sullen, or maybe she's just irritable often. And you're like, oh my gosh, she's got to stop doing this. So it's looking at, hey, I noticed you have such a big heart with your friends. And sometimes it seems like you're not sure what to do with all the information that you're hearing from them, and teaching her about reflective listening, teaching her about she can be empathetic and at the same time not take that on. But you're building up this characteristic that you see in her, that she is a very caring and loving individual. And at the same time, you want to support her and give her some skills in how not to necessarily take on other people's stuff, the boundary piece of it. One thing I noticed too is sometimes the expectations that parents may have, it's looking at the positive expectations without going in and rescuing your daughter. So one prime example I hear often is when they have speech class in high school, they get really, really nervous about it. And parents often say, "Oh, you'll be great. You've got this," right? There's a praise that goes with that, but it doesn't help really your role modeling that confidence that you have on them. So instead, it's acknowledging, "Oh, I hear that you're nervous about this speech, and I have every confidence in you." Right? So you reflect back what you're seeing in her, you reflect her emotions, and speech is still, I think, the number one fear for people in our country, right? You're acknowledging what's going on in her and that you have confidence in her. That you're not expecting her to be perfect in it. You're expecting her to be where she is, that she's going to be a little nervous. And if she's prepared for it, you've watched this process that she's gone through. It's like, hey, I've got confidence in you. Another way that you can encourage your teenager is we call it reframing in the therapy world. It's your way of being able to kind of zoom back with your teenager and help her kind of understand a different way of viewing things. So if, for example, she does a job interview, she doesn't get it, she comes home and maybe she's really discouraged by that, or she is frustrated by it. Acknowledge her emotions, normalize them. Yep, I can totally understand why you feel really frustrated by this or think that it's not fair. And let's pause for a moment and let's look at what you did well. Let's look at what you learned from this. You got to be able to practice your interview skills. You got some feedback from them of what they were looking for, what they needed. So you're helping her look at this is practice. It was an opportunity, and it doesn't define her. That one moment doesn't define her as a person. It says, okay, you've learned something from it, and so we keep moving forward with it. Remember, all of this takes time and practice. So if you're not sure how you encourage yourself, pause for the moment and what are the things that you like about yourself? What are the things that you acknowledge? If you're receiving compliments from others, do you receive them well, right? If you're like, "Oh, no," and you kind of deflect them or push them off, you're sending a message to your daughter, right? That it's like, okay, I can't accept that, or I'm still not enough because I'm not getting that acceptance or praise from other people. So explore that within yourself. How do I encourage my own self? How do I build up my confidence even when fear may sometimes rise up? How do I lean into that and still move forward from that? So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you're struggling with this and you're truly needing some support, I encourage you to go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com. I offer parenting coaching for those who are needing some more support in this. And I love working with women in refining their life's purpose, reclaiming those parts of themselves that may have become hidden due to motherhood, and regain how to do self-care and nurturing skills. So thank you again for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Take care. Thank you for listening to Launching Your Daughter with Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. For more information or to stay up to date, go to launchingyourdaughter.com. You can sign up for my email list or join my Facebook group. Thank you.